have?
We have Brendan. I'm going to bring in Brendan.
Sick.
Hey,
Brendan, are
hey,
you with us?
Hey, Brendan,
I'm
how
with
are you?
you.
Awesome.
You know
Woohoo!
what? If I was any better, I'd have to be someone else. Something my dad
All
always said.
right. Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here, man. Let
Thank you
us
so much
know.
for having me.
Yeah. What's your story? What do you want to share with us?
All right, yeah, I sent you two of them. They were kind of some more, I would say, positive encounters.
Oh, good. We could use that.
Yeah, we need some of
Yeah.
that energy.
Okay, yeah. So the first one is a story that my mom and dad both have told me and corroborated together. It was a house that they lived in. Actually, we were actually all there together. Smithfield, Pennsylvania, is where this takes place. Oh, sorry, I
Oh, it's all
think I
good.
lost you there for a second. Okay,
No, yeah, we're here.
nah.
Smithfield, Pennsylvania.
Yes, yes, Smithfield, Pennsylvania. Yeah, so I was very young when we lived there, probably from like 5 to 9, and my sister was really young too. She was potty training, that was relevant to the story. When we first moved in, my parents were worried because this was an old farmhouse with the really steep stairs that were just impossible for a toddler to climb.
Mm.
So they put her downstairs in what really should have been the master bedroom. And because it was the 90s, they had a big waterbed that they hauled up the
Nice.
stairs. And oh yeah, it was
I
one of
forgot
those that
about
you tried
those.
to jump in, right? They were
Yep.
awesome, but really terrible at the same time. Um, so they filled it up after hauling the thing upstairs, and the bedroom that they chose was right above my sister's bedroom in this old farmhouse, right? Spoiler alert, what could possibly go wrong with that? Um, so my mom, I actually called her the other day just to hear the story. I didn't tell her I was coming on here, but wanted to hear it again to make sure. And she said that she was shaken awake after about a week of moving in, like violently shaken, and thought that it was my dad, thought it was her husband. But no one was there. So she got up and decided, well, I'm going to use the bathroom because I'm already awake. So she comes down the stairs and all the way around. There was only one bathroom in the whole place, and it was in the kitchen at the other end of the house. You had to do this huge. It was like labyrinth just to get to the bathroom in this old farm place. So she gets to the bathroom and then finishes and walks out and says that she feels the temperature drop, just this chill take place, and found it difficult to move. And then got to the base of the stairs to go back up to her bedroom and couldn't, like something was holding her legs down. And she just felt this immense feeling of dread, like something terrible was going to happen and she had to be present for it. And it terrified her, so she laid down. And then she started to hear these cries. And it was this little girl saying, like, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and this really scary, kind of situation. So she went to check on my sister. My sister's fast asleep. And so she lays back down on the couch in the living room, falls asleep. The next morning, my dad sees her on the couch and goes, "Hey, were you sick?" And she's like, "No." And she didn't want to tell him. He wasn't really into any of the inverted world kind of lifestyle at that time. And then so she waited to tell him, and finally he got it out of her and said he must have had a dream, right? So the next morning, my mom wakes up and goes downstairs, and this time it's my dad laying on the couch who had the exact same thing happen to him the night that night before. And so while my sister and I are out at daycare or something, my mom is doing some cleaning around the house. I'm not sure. I think I might have been at school at that point. But she goes into my sister's room after just being like, okay, something is going on. I'm just going to look around the house. And she walked into my sister's room and looked up. And there, above my sister's crib, you could see where the ceiling was starting to crack and break under the weight of the waterbed. And so whatever this little spirit was woke my mom and dad repeatedly to try and get them to be warned about the fact that my sister was going to be the next spirit that joined her if they didn't
Wow.
move it out of the house. The craziest thing is that when she started to get into the research of the story, or behind the house, she discovered that a little girl had died while living in
Wow.
this house around the
Wow.
same age as my sister at that time. She had been hit by a logging truck that
Wow.
was on the highway just maybe 10 meters away from the front door of the house. We were never allowed to play in the front yard because of that. And so my mom said that after that, the spirit got a lot more mischievous after the danger had passed, and like the radio would be turned to a different knob after my mom would come home from shopping. Um, I don't really remember much of that stuff, but it was interesting to hear her take on that. I had stories of my own from things later on in life, but
Love
anyway,
that.
they eventually
That's
moved out of that
great.
house to Michigan, leaving that place behind. And she said that when they first started talking about it, the spirit got really angry and started like throwing things because she didn't want my mom to leave. My mom was pretty sure that she was supposed to be some sort of, I don't know, vessel for the spirit to find rest. So
Wow. That's
Throwing
wild.
things like a plate across the kitchen.
not necessarily across the room, but they were big Y2K preppers, and so they'd find things shoved off the shelves at the top of the cellar, the racks at the cellar. So that was something that they said happened a couple of times.
Y2K preppers with a waterbed. I love this.
I know.
Oh yeah.
The whole
It brings me
situation's
back.
incredible.
I know. I miss my dad a lot. It's
Oh,
kind of interesting. Yeah, he had some stories, which is actually the second one. He was a pastor within the Churches of Christ for 18 years, and one of the early years of his ministry, he received a call from one of the congregants, and they said, "Hey, Mom, we're just going to call her. I don't know. Let's call her Betty. Betty had a heart attack. She made it, and she's asking for you." And so my dad's like, "Well, okay, I'll come in and pray with her, and then all of that stuff." And so she walked in and said, "Okay, everybody out. I need to talk. I need to talk to Mark. I need to talk to my preacher." My dad's name was Mark. Um, so they all leave, and he sits down, and he's like, "Oh, geez, this must be serious." And surely enough, she said, "Mark, I met him." She's like, "You met who, Betty?" She said, "I met him. And you haven't done a good enough job of describing him. Jesus is beautiful."
wow.
And my dad's jaw kind of dropped, and he said, "Okay, well, what happened?" She says, "Well, I was sitting in my rocker doing my crocheting, and then he just walked into the room, bright as the sun, but not blinding me." Something along those lines, just starting to describe, this beautiful scene. And she started to giggle a little bit to herself and said, he said, "Betty, it's time to go." And I said, "Jesus, I'm itching to go with you, but you sure you can't come some other time? My youngest daughter's going to get married this year, and I want to see her walk down the aisle." And my dad at this point, he's like, "Okay, this must have just been some weird thing right before death." And she said, "Mark, I'm serious with you. What he said was, 'How's a year sound?' And I said, 'Jesus, I'll take it. So start writing my funeral because I've only got a year left.'" My dad kind of brushed it off. And y'all, a year to the day, she died.
No.
No.
1 year later to the day.
Oh my goodness. Do you mind if I ask how she died? Do you remember?
Natural causes. She was as
Holy
healthy and
moly.
fit as can be and was totally fine, full recovery from her heart attack, but just died in her sleep.
That's wild.
It was nuts.
That
Absolutely nuts.
is wild. It reminds me of the story we heard about, like the guy with the dream,
Yeah.
in this
Or
Cinco
with
de
his-
Mayo,
yeah.
like kind of knowing these dreams have some sort of premonition in them. That's a crazy story. Those are two crazy stories.
I don't want Jesus coming to me and telling me.
Well, I certainly do. I do.
You
And
do? You
yeah.
want to know your
I mean,
date?
I don't
I
want to know
mean,
my
if he
date, but
comes to you, then you know where you're going.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I like that. I like that. That's the first time I've ever heard someone meeting him and having like an offer given back.
Right? That was the weird thing for him too. He was like, this can't be real. But she died a year to the day.
Betty must have been a special lady.
Betty must have been.
She
And
prayed a
I
lot.
obviously I don't remember her real name,
Right,
and I wouldn't have
right.
given to it just because we don't want to dox
I
anybody.
don't want to
But
dox
yeah,
Betty.
that was hashtag don't dox Betty.
Don't
It's gonna
dox
be great.
Betty. That is amazing. What two amazing stories. Well, thank you so much for those.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Appreciate y'all.
We needed
Hopefully I'll
those.
leave the gremlins here. I've got a show of mine that we're recording tomorrow, so I'll leave the weird gremlins here in y'all's store or y'all's show. It's gonna be fun. So thank you so much
Awesome.
for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. Have a great one. Bye. That was awesome.
Good energy,
Good
I like
hopeful
that.
one. So who do we got?
Yeah, we got Randy. Randy, are you feeling Randy? I think she said it was Randy. Let me see. Probably the wrong. No, Randy, are you with us?
Randy, can you hear us?
He said it looks like he's muted. Randy,
Randy, if you can hear us, you are muted.
unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hey. What's up?
Sorry about that.
All good, all good. How are you?
I'm doing okay for now.
For now. Okay, fair. That's a good,
Well, it's
honest,
Sunday. I
good,
gotta work
honest answer.
tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Hey, we're working now, so
Well, before we get to work tomorrow, what cool story do you have for us tonight?
Uh, just one story, short story I have happened 10 plus years ago when I was living down in Florida, and as far as I know, it's the only paranormal experience I've had.
Let's hear it.
That's good. All right. Well, see, I moved down there with my brother and sister. We were all going to college, going to start working. It was the first time going out on our own, and shortly after I got my first job, uh, I fell into a little depression. It was the job was fine, but for the most of the week, I was like pretty isolated, and because of everyone's schedules, I probably wouldn't see or speak to anyone for most of the week until the weekend.
Mm.
I don't know how much of this actually leads into it,
No,
but
go for
then
it.
going into it, it all happened over a year, and on several occasions, I would actually wake up with. It could have been sleep paralysis, but I don't know. I just wake up and unable to move or speak. Just feel like a great weight just holding me down. And yeah, it could have been sleep paralysis, but at the time it was pretty scary. And the only thing I can think to do was just try to muscle out the word Jesus, like a little short, quick prayer. And immediately afterwards, I was always able to move. Then
Was was Christ a religion part of your life before that moment?
no, for the longest time, I was not very religious at all.
And just as you're experiencing the sleep paralysis, it
It
kind of
was the
dawns
only
on
thing
you.
it was the only thing that pops in my head. Like, this is what I can do.
Wow. And how did that feel? Like once you did that, did it help?
Uh, yeah, I think it helped a bit, but like throughout the year, it kept happening, so I didn't really know what to think of it. I kind of was arguing with myself. It was probably just sleep paralysis. I don't want to think about it too much.
Were you seeing anything?
No, not at the time. No,
So you were like,
but
but you were seeing your room and nothing in it, and you couldn't move.
right. And strangely, it was always happening when I was like laying on my side or on my stomach or my belly, laying flat on the bed.
Hmm.
Never when I was facing up.
Interesting. So you tried some trial and error to figure out how to get rid of this.
Yeah, I
but you
thought it would
never had
probably
it
just
before.
no. This is the only time it ever happened to me, even to now, today.
And did it resolve itself? Or how did it resolve itself?
Well, it stopped happening after my one little encounter. See, all this actually led up to this one morning. I fully wake up, in a cold terror. Like, yeah, I'm like watching a scary movie. I just wake up, I'm feeling cold and scared, and
Mm-hmm.
at the foot of my bed, there's just this pitch black cloud, just like hovering there at the foot of my bed. And all this happened within like 2 seconds, really. But as I'm staring at the thing, I don't know what to do or think. As I'm staring into the dark cloud, like I could just faintly make out the outline of what looked like a skull to me.
Hmm. Inside the cloud?
Inside the cloud, yeah, like in
And
the upper half of the cloud where the head might be. And as I'm laying there, like this first time and only time I was like laying on my back, I'm like fully awake and I see this thing, and then I can swear I just feel like the breath is just coming out of me, like I'm being drained almost.
wow.
And as soon as I wake up, I see this thing. A second or two later, the thing just shoots to my left, right where the windows are in my room. It just shoots out of view and completely gone. And only then can I actually get up and move again.
When it was hovering over you, was it moving or was it still?
It was pretty still, like black cloud was probably withering a bit, thing, but the thing itself was stationary, just standing there at the foot of my bed
Until it moved quickly to the other
until it
direction.
just shot straight out to my left, out of view. I couldn't see it anymore.
And that's how it disappeared. It didn't like did you watch it go through a wall or just dissolve in front of
No,
you?
no, it just shot out of view, out of my peripheral. I didn't see anything after that. I'm just guessing it went out the windows because they were to my left, out of view.
What did you make of it? Like after that happened, how did you feel? Do you feel like it was part of the sleep paralysis, like you were dreaming or half awake, or do you have another way of thinking about it?
I realized I was like fully awake. I was shaking a bit. It was cold. I sat up immediately and that was the first time in so many years I actually set out a full prayer, like, please watch over me and my family, protect us from evil. And this is really what got my interest in religion back.
That's great. That's great. I love that. Where has anything else happened since? That's weird, or was
After
that kind
that,
of like the last?
that was the one and only encounter I've had. I mean, after that, I started praying semi regularly, but yeah, after my belief came back and started studying the Bible a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
that was the one and only time.
Do you have a certain prayer or a part in the verse in the book in the Bible that you use when you're feeling like this or trying to ward these things off?
Not really, but the constant thing I do pray is just watch over me, my family, and this household.
Perfect. Yeah, I do that as well, and I also like the Psalms have some of the best prayers to ward off evil and demons. So I recommend going through that and seeing what you find. The Psalms are some of the best written poems ever about everything, not just warding off spirits. Obviously, is love of God, but there are those in there as well. But thank you so much for the phone call.
Thank you.
Sleep well, Randy.
That was almost like a threat, Alex. My goodness, this man doesn't need any more threats
I mean,
in his nighttime.
I feel like I get sleep paralysis sometimes too. Maybe it's just stress.
When I drive home after this show, I feel like I'm in sleep paralysis. I don't know how I got home. It's weird.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that feeling of like you're laying there and you're awake, but your body feels very heavy and you can't like get up.
I did once have sleep paralysis in that old house I talk about where I grew up, and it was like a many tentacled, like dark shadowy figure on the ceiling dancing above the room. And that also was I shared the bedroom that boy used to have that was murdered in my house in 1979, previous to us living there. So I always thought that had something to do with it, but I have no idea.
Maybe.
It's also the same house where I saw a shadow hand.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it was just like a hellhole, like from Buffy. Remember they had like that place had a hellhole where all the bad things would come up. I'm pretty sure that house was on top of one of those. It's also at the bottom of a landfill.
Yeah, very poltergeisty.
There's a lot of weird things happening in that place.